Good afternoon. On this glorious and beautiful summer day, we've gathered together to remember an equally brilliant spirit as we join in remembering the life and the deeds of Walter Shoenfeld. We begin with the comforting poetry of the biblical Psalms. Esaenai el hechari me'ayin yavo ezri Esaenai el hechari me'ayin yavo ezri Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains, from whence does my strength come? My strength comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Words from Hebrew poetess and freedom fighter Hannah Senesh. Yesh kochavim she'oram magia artza rak ka'asher hem atzmam avdu ve'enam. There are stars up above so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. If you so desire, please join with me in the words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. A reading by a prominent 20th century rabbi, one that resonated with Walter in a recent conversation. If some messenger were to come to us with the offer that death should be overthrown, but with the one inseparable condition that birth should also cease. If the existing generation were given the chance to live forever, but on the clear understanding that never again would there be a child or a youth or first love, never again new persons with new hopes, new ideas, new achievements, ourselves for always and never any others, could the answer be in doubt? We shall not fear the summons of death. We shall remember those who have gone before us and those who will come after us. Let us therefore treasure the time we have and resolve to use it well, counting each moment precious, a chance to apprehend some truth, to experience some beauty, to conquer some evil, to relieve some suffering, to love and be loved, to achieve something of lasting worth. Help us, Lord, to fulfill the promise that is in each of us, and so to conduct ourselves that, generations hence, it will be true to say of us, the world is better because for a brief space we lived in it. A king traveled a road on his way to battle. He saw a very old man hunched over on the side of the road. The king was curious, and so he stopped to speak to the man. He asked the man what he was doing, and the man replied, "I am planting a fig tree." The king was amazed. Didn't the old man know that fig trees took 3 years to grow and blossom and put forth edible fruit? Why, asked the king, would you plant a tree that will not bear fruit in your lifetime? The man replied, my grandfather planted for my father for me, and I plant not for myself, but for those who come after me. The king shook his head and went along his way. Years passed, and the king fought many battles and survived. He found himself traveling home along the same road and, not believing his eyes, he saw the same old man standing on the side of the road beneath a bounteous fig tree, picking fruit and placing it into a basket. As the king approached, he could see the man smiling, beaming a smile of faith and fulfillment. The king rewarded the man for his commitment to family and to the future by filling the fruit basket with gold pieces. This story brings to mind the life and deeds of Walter Shoenfeld, the man whom we honor today, a man who gave so freely of himself, a man who possessed a vision and a faith in the future, a man who was devoted to his loving family. The seeds he planted have blossomed in blessing, and we are all enriched by this harvest of the heart. The eloquent obituary and imminent sharing by friends and family are but a glimpse into this singular man and his abundant life. His graduation from one of the big three, Garfield, his matriculation from UW, his service to our country during the Korean conflict, and most importantly, his embrace of his most cherished treasure, Esther, his life partner for 60 years and co-builder of a home and family, the fruits of which surround us this day. Much is also known and will be affirmed in a moment about Walter's business acumen and civic leadership. Suffice it to say that without knowing Walter when I was a teen, I respected him immensely in that Britannia jeans and Vans footwear were the coveted emblems of ultimate cool. Though I wonder if Walter really appreciated the moniker of Grandpa of Grunge. If I may, I'd like to share how this remarkable public figure, known as much for his entrepreneurial success as his emotional sensitivity, impacted my life in personal and significant ways. As a new young rabbi coming to an established historic congregation, I was concerned as to how my new ideas and approach would be received by temple elders. On many, many occasions, often apropos of nothing, Walter went out of his way to compliment my rabbinate and to laud temple's new direction. This unprompted, heartfelt expression moved and buoyed me in ways I'm not sure he truly realized. I'm sure this is a familiar story for many of you. The inspiring words and generous deeds Walter shared with me and so many others possessed such purity, such genuine kindness for its own sake, that their power will be indelibly impressed on all of us in ways that transcend the passing of his earthly form. I was privileged to spend some time with Walter in these last few weeks. He offered tongue in poignant cheek that he wanted to go out when it wasn't fun anymore. But most importantly, Walter had no regrets and a wealth that exceeded even his considerable worldly resources, for he looked back on a fulfilling, purposeful life, and he shared it with a loving, dutiful spouse, adoring and accomplished children and grandchildren, and a larger community of friends and colleagues uniquely and enduringly enriched by his presence in it. In our tradition, a worthy life is rewarded with a length of years, and his father had quite a length of years, 108 to be exact. But even more critically, a deserving life is brought to a close contentedly, peacefully, and surrounded by beauty and love. Walter passed from our lives overlooking a gorgeous vista of Lake Washington, nurtured by a grateful family at his bedside, passing quietly from this world with the echoes of his spirit still resounding in our souls. Zichrono livracha. May his memory indeed be for blessing. And let us say, Amen. There are a number of friends and family who wish to come up and share reminiscences that can only come from their personal treasured experiences. I'd like to first invite daughter Leanne.
Wow, that was beautiful, Rabbi. Thank you. I'm not as eloquent. After 14 years of living out of town, when I moved back to Seattle at the age of 31, no one really knew of Leanne Ottinger. But if I said I was Jeff Schoenfeld's sister or Walter Shoenfeld's daughter, you can imagine I was set. More interestingly, though, was the reaction that I got when I said I was Doug's daughter. Every single time for the past 25 years, for sure once a month, if not once a week, someone would tell me an amazing story about how my dad had touched their life in a very quiet and sincere way. And so as I look out at all of you, I see the fabric of his life, and it is no wonder that you are here. You are a beautiful tribute to my dad, and on behalf of my entire family, I thank you for the outpouring of love and support, and for the beautiful messages and thoughts that you have sent all of us regarding Dad. He touched so many lives. What a guy. There's a lot to say about Walter, but he was a man who appreciated brevity. If he were here, very simply, this is what he would want to say. He was happy. He lived a great life with no regrets, as the rabbi said. He married a good-looking broad. He loved his family, and Hakuna Matata. Now everyone go home. That's what he would say. And that's probably why you all loved him so much, because you could be going home right now if he had it his way. But while we inherited so many of his good qualities, the brevity thing is not our strong suit. It's certainly not mine. So we'll do our best, but please indulge me as I elaborate on those 5 simple truths of my dad's life. And forgive me for reading, but if I don't, we'll be in worse shape because I'll go off on tangents. Dad was happy. It was the most important thing that he wanted all of you and all of us to know, because he truly was, always. He lived life in a very full way, putting all of his wisdom, intellect, energy, and curiosity to amazing pursuits that you all know about and have read about. Those things challenged him and delighted him, but what made him truly happy was waking up every day, seeing a beautiful world full of possibility, and connecting with people. He walked this earth with humility and integrity and such a huge heart, and he created Walter magic wherever he went. My dad made the most important decision of his life in 1955. That was when he met the love of his life, my mom, Esther Bihar. Theirs was love at first sight. They were introduced on a double date where they were each paired with somebody else. But by the end of the night, it was clear they were the couple that was meant to be. They were engaged in 3 weeks, married in 6 months, and happily married these past 60 years. One of my favorite stories that Dad loved to tell was the story of him asking my grandpa David for permission to marry my mother. I like it because it reflects my dad's humor, which was a huge part of Dub, and it reflects so much of my dad's integrity. You see, when Walter asked Esther for her hand, he clarified to her that it was not his tradition to keep kosher, and that was something he couldn't do. He let her know that he was going to meet with her Orthodox father, who was the Chazan of Congregation Ezer B'Sereth, and that when he asked for Grandpa's permission, he was also going to disclose this intention. about not being kosher. Poor little 19-year-old Esther was shaking in her boots. She was trembling at the thought of that conversation or confrontation. But Walter, at the young age of 24, not only had the confidence and composure to address the situation, it was a testimony to the importance for him of living life in a transparent, honest, and respectful way with the utmost of integrity. What makes the story fabulous is that Dad got in there, told Grandpa he wanted to marry Esther and would take great care of her, but they would not keep a kosher home. And Grandpa replied that he believed Walter would take care of his precious youngest daughter, and that he had no hesitation about blessing their union. He simply had one request. He asked Dad to please agree that he wouldn't have the family over to their house for dinner. Well, Dad thought he hit the jackpot. And without missing a beat, he asked Grandpa if he could have that in writing. At which point, they all roared with laughter. Of course, not only did my grandpa recognize and appreciate that Walter was of the highest moral character, but the epilogue is that not only did the family come to their home many times, but in fact, we koshered our home good enough to have Grandpa David actually live with us for 6 months in the later years of his life. I want to share a bittersweet story from last month. We were at the Proton Radiation Center up in Northgate for one of Dad's last treatments. He was physically in pretty bad shape, but mentally vibrant as he was to the end. And he said to me from his wheelchair, "I'm happy. I've been thinking about it a lot, and to be honest, it seems a little weird given my circumstances, but honestly, I am happy. I've lived such a great life, and I have no regrets other than leaving my girlfriend," at which point Mom chirped in and said, "I'll be sure to call her for you." And the three of us again burst out laughing and crying. And the truth is, leaving her and not being around to see the grandchildren grow up and get married were disappointments to him, but he really had no regrets. He was an adventuresome guy, not in terms of summiting Mount Rainier, but in terms of his entrepreneurial spirit, his worldly travels, his genuine connections with people he met in all walks of life that gave him rich experiences beyond measure. He had a zest for life that was contagious, a sense of humor that was infectious, and he was in the game all the way. As he would say, put it on the hard eight. Just ask the grandkids, my brothers, my husband, Ron Neubauer, or Stevie Baby Bear. He had no regrets. He married a good-looking broad. You need only look at my mom to agree. He married a Bond girl. And I have to tell you, every day that he woke up at home, he would look out the window, see the lake, and marvel, "Have you ever seen a more beautiful place?" Similarly, every time my mother walked in the room, his eyes would light up. He would take her in with pride and joyfully say, "I married a good-looking broad." It never got old, maybe for Mom. Now, he certainly made a point of making sure the grandsons understand that when they meet the one, she can't just be a good-looking broad. She has to have brains like Grandma. But that phrase was really a metaphor for the fullness of their love, their incredible partnership, and the joy of the journey they shared and the life they created over 60 incredible years. Most of all, Dad loved his family, and wow, do we love him. Just last night, the grandchildren reminded me how they laugh that on our infamous annual trips to Mauna Kea, which Dad planned, hosted, and made utterly fabulous in every way, he would invariably raise his Mai Tai, and with tears of joy and sincere gratitude in his eyes, he would thank each and every one of us for our willingness to take the time and make the effort to come be with him and Mom year after year after year in Hawaii, as though we were doing him some big favor. It's quite clear the pleasure was all ours, but sure, Dad, you're welcome. And his favorite toast was La Familia, which is Italian, which he doesn't speak, but meant the family. For Dad, no matter what he was doing, no matter who he was with, family came first. And if we called him at work, on the golf course, or meeting with the president, he took our call. We mattered most. To be Walter's daughter is an altogether lucky draw in life. I told him this summer, during the Seahawk negotiations, that if I had $1 for every time in my life that he made me feel loved, supported, and capable, it would amount to a lot more than Russell Wilson's new contract. He was a patriarch like none other. My husband Randy referred to him as the silverback of our guerrilla troop. When Skylab was falling, Dad stayed up all night on the patio watching to make sure it wouldn't land on us. What he was going to do if he saw it, we'll never know. Thankfully, it landed in Australia, probably because he was standing watch. He cared, he was there, he protected, and if we goofed up, he supported us. He had high expectations for all of us, but he also had a fun-loving, humorous recipe for life. Our childhood ran the gamut from having Dad come home on snow days and sled down the neighborhood hills with us, to coming home from school and finding Spencer Haywood in the living room. It was all Walter magic, and what a ride it has been. If I could write an epitaph for Dad, it would be Hakuna Matata, or in Hebrew, Hakuna Matata. It means no worries. He never measured success by fame or fortune. We lived great, but material things never mattered. Give the man a good scotch, some fabulous caviar, and time spent with those he loved, all of which we were still doing as of a few days ago, and the man was happy. Dad didn't believe in sweating the small stuff, or even sometimes the big stuff. He believed in himself, he believed in us, he believed in the honesty and possibility of hard work. A few weeks ago, I was telling a long-distance colleague about my dad. After describing Deb, the friend said to me, "He sounds like his daughter's father." I can tell you that is a compliment I will treasure and aspire to forever, because I wear proudly and joyfully the badge of honor that is being Walter Shoenfeld's daughter. Thank you for everything, Dad. I love you, and you are very much with me always.
Well, there's my life in a nutshell. I always have to follow that. My heart's beating. Is today about grieving the loss of a great man, or is it about celebrating the beautiful life that was lived so very well? I think the answer is both. But in my few minutes with you today, I want to focus on celebrating the extraordinary life of my father, Walter Shoenfeld. Maya Angelou said it in 6 words: life loves the liver of it. My dad, more than anyone I know, embraced life, lived with love, passion, purpose, and intelligence right until the very end. He loved life, and life was so very good to him. Let me take you back to 1970. We lived in Woodridge, a little piece of suburbia on a hill up by Factoria, and my dad was looking to expand his necktie company into Europe. So my parents decided we should pick up and move to London for a year. Now, while that doesn't seem outrageous today, at the time it was simply unheard of. My dad loved Europe, the way a 5-year-old would love Disneyland, and we took all the rides. From my perspective, goodbye Snoqualmie Pass, hello Val d'Isere. One of the great parts of traveling Europe with my dad, as Leanne alluded to, is that he was a master linguist. Or so he thought. Here he is in Italian. Oh, why you don't understand me? I speak a perfect Italiano. He couldn't understand. Or France. France was the best because as the French, as we know, they love to say, "Monsieur, it is not possible." To which my dad would smile and come back in French, "Mon ami, it is possible, and it will happen." And it did. One of the great all-time Walter stories took place in Venice. It became family legend because it so typifies my dad. It was a usual day with Walter, outstanding. We went out for a fabulous dinner and we walked around the streets of Venice. Now it was getting late and it was time to take the gondola boat back to the hotel. As we're about to get to the boat, my dad sees the coolest thing that I've ever seen, a guy with yo-yos, and as a yo-yo, it would light up. Now remember, I'm 10 and this is 1970, so it's kind of amazing. And my dad decides that he needs to get one for each of the kids, which was awesome. So we get the yo-yos, go to get in the boat, and my dad asks the driver in Italian, "How much for the boat ride back into the hotel?" But at this point, he realizes that he's spent his last lira buying the 3 yo-yos. My dad continues to talk to the guy in Italian, and after a while, the guy slaps my dad on the back and he says, "I like you, and you got a nicer family. Get in, I give you a ride." My dad loved life. People loved him. He didn't sweat the small stuff, and somehow it always worked out. The year in London also changed the trajectory of the life of my parents. They became friends with amazing people, most notably Lord Marcus Seif, who, at the time, was the epicenter of all things business and politics in London. Lord Seif loved my parents, and he wanted to introduce them to everyone. My dad loved the story of the time Lord Seif invited him to a very small lunch that he had planned. The guest list included Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, Lord Baron Rothschild, Mr. David Frost, and a few of similar esteem. Margaret Thatcher arrived. She walked over to my dad, and she said, "I know all the others in the room. Who are you?" Dad, in his usual humble way, replied to the Prime Minister that he was a necktie man from Seattle, Washington. Needless to say, she immediately liked him. And of course, the year in London was the time that inspired my dad to create the idea for Britannia jeans. My mom and dad were always attracted to smart, interesting, and accomplished people. But I truly marveled at the many extraordinary people they knew, and how these people were drawn to my parents like a magnet. Now this will not shock you, but when I went to visit my dad in Palm Springs, we often liked to get out for a round or two of golf. One day it would be Kirk Douglas joining us, another day it might be Don Meredith, and then yet another day Dinah Shore as a regular. Now to be honest, I was a bit intimidated the first time I played golf with Spartacus. But these 3 in particular were among the kindest and funniest people I've ever known, and they all truly loved my dad. One time, the whole family gathered in Palm Springs. After we had dinner and put the kids to bed, my dad suggested that we go see a movie. So the 8 of us got in the car and we drove over to Frank and Barbara Sinatra's house. And we sat with them in the Sinatra living room and watched a movie together. Only my dad. You know, my dad was never confused about the purpose of his life, so he was able to live every day with crystal clarity. Family. Everything he did was guided by his love of family. Friends. My dad cherished his many, many great friends, and they added to his life immeasurably. Business. For my dad, it was not work. He truly enjoyed business, and he cared deeply about quality, integrity, and the culture that he created. Community. My dad had tremendous civic pride. He always believed that we were destined to become a world-class city, and he played an active role in doing so in many ways that help achieve the vision and where we are today. Like everyone else in this room, my dad had challenges, but to him, challenges were simply an opportunity to use intelligence and hard work to find a solution. Even as he battled the cancer, he kept an amazing positive attitude. Leanne told a story about him at proton therapy. I've got one also. About a couple months ago, as he was going through this, it was for the cancer that was on his back. And the treatment affected his legs to the point that his balance was not good and he could really barely walk. So one morning I woke up about 6:30 and there was a text from my mom, "Please call me ASAP." I called my mom and she explained that Dad had fallen over in the kitchen and couldn't get up. So I jumped in my car and rushed over there. And there was my dad on the floor, my mom lovingly sitting beside him. She'd put a pillow over his head and a blanket to cover my dad. And they were happy on the floor together. So I said to my dad, "Hey Dad, how you doing?" Which in hindsight's got me the stupidest question. And you know what my dad said? He said, "I'm doing pretty good. Turns out lying on the floor really took the pain away from my back." That was just classic Walter. He meant it. You know, I always thought that having Walter as my father was the best gift I could ever receive. But this gift gets even better, because he also showed me how to be a father to my children. And although my dad is gone, it's a gift that keeps on giving. As you all know, when we're young kids, we look up to our fathers. We feel like they're giants among other men. Smart, strong, capable. Well, now I'm 55 years old, and I still feel that way about my father. He was simply the most outstanding man I've ever known. I'm so fortunate to be the son of Walter Shoenfeld, and I will miss him beyond anything words can say.
I'd like to invite up dear friend Lenny Wilkins.
Thank you very much. And I know that today, we're here to remember and to celebrate a very special life, that of Walter Schoenfeld. I learned so many things from him. I was traded here in 1969 as a player, and I came kicking and screaming, because I was leaving a team that had a chance to win a championship, and of all places, I was traded to Seattle. Well, when I got here, I met some of the most incredible people, and one of them was Walter Schoenfeld. I learned from Walter, that life was always going to be a challenge. Sometimes it's a puzzle. Occasionally it would be an adventure. But most of all, it was God's gift to all of us. And Walter knew this, and he embraced it. He so loved his family, and you can tell that from them speaking. And they returned that love to Walter also. Walter, he brought something special. He brought God's light into the world. And that light will continue to shine through his family. Although this moment in life may be gone, but our memories of Walter will always be our treasure to keep. And we're so blessed to have had Walter in our lives. I know that I am, and I will be forever grateful for him. Walter helped me to understand that life was all of our duties, that we could perform it very well if we wanted to, that life has its sorrows, and we have to overcome those. That when life sometimes becomes a struggle, deal with it. That sometimes, life can be like a song and sing it. Now, I didn't sing it, but I don't know if he did either, but he did very well. Life is a journey, and Walter completed that journey better than anybody I know. Walter was kind of like a solitary bird. And if you know about a solitary bird, it has 5 conditions. Okay? 1, that it point its head skyward. 2, that it always fly to the highest point. 3, that it does not suffer for company, not even of its own kind. 4, that it sing very softly. And 5, that it has no definite color. Walter was huge in encouraging me as a young coach for the Seattle Supersonics. I was asked to take over as a player coach by the general manager, Dick Vertley. I was here 1 year as a player. They fired their coach, and they asked me to take over and be a player coach, and I told them they had to be crazy, you know. But Walter believed that I could accomplish, that I could do it. And so reluctantly, I did take over. And thank God, things worked out right. And we won a championship, and I give all the credit in the world to Walter. I mean, he was always upbeat. I never met anyone who always felt like the sun was shining. And here in Seattle, I mean, that was amazing. Walter was a man for all seasons. He was my friend, and I shall miss him. But we are all better off because he touched our lives. And Walter, I will see you again. Thank you.
Forgive me also for reading. This is harder than I had anticipated. My name is Michelle Shoenfeld, but in this family they call me Geese, and I am married to Esther and Walter's youngest child, Gary. I am one of 3 very fortunate people to have been able to call Walter my father-in-law, the others being Julie, married to Jeff, and Randy, married to Leanne. I met Walter when I was only 18 years old, and as Gary and I got serious pretty quickly, I immediately became one of the family, always treated as a daughter. I feel very privileged to be up here today speaking to you, because I know there are so many in the room who knew Walter so well and loved and adored him and could have easily been up here and speak on his behalf. So family, thank you for giving me this honor. When thinking about what I wanted to say, I realized how much Walter has shaped my family's life, mine with Gary and our 3 kids, David, Melissa, and Jack. Some in more obvious ways, but other much more subtle influences. His love for travel, for adventure, for trying new things, meeting new people, all these have rubbed off on us. Some very specific examples, of course, like Leanne said, our annual trips to Mauna Kea, or other fabulous trips to Europe, the Bahamas, to Mexico. But it's the subtle influences I believe are the most impactful. Like in 2005, when Gary and I decided to pack our family up and move to London for 6 months, and enroll our 3 children, ages 6, 9, and 11, in the American School of London. To some, this seemed like a huge idea, but to Gary and me, it wasn't, because as you've heard, this is what Gary did when he was a child, and when he was only 8 years old, and he and Jeff and Leanne also went to the American School of London. Or, when many times over the last 13 years, my family has chartered a boat and gone up into Canada and the San Juan Islands, not with a captain and a crew, but with Gary as our captain and the 4 of us as crew. These trips have become our family's favorite, and they are just like the trips Gary took with his family and he learned from his father growing up. All through my children's life, we would sit down for family dinner, and Gary would speak to them in detail about what was going on at work, the challenges he had, the projects he was working on, engaging them, even taking them to the office sometimes to listen and learn. And I watched, and I knew this is how Gary got his start in business. Excuse me. Learning from his father, that Walter gave him such a good start and a good head for business. And I've watched Gary emulate that with our 3 children. I've been so lucky to be Walter's daughter-in-law and part of this loving, wonderful family. The experiences we've had together, the places we've been, and the love we've shared go beyond anything I had imagined my life would look like. I will miss him dearly. His fist pump greeting, his perpetual smile and positive attitude, but I know Walter's spirit, his love for life, and his do the right thing attitude will be firmly instilled in Gary and I, and David, Melissa, and Jack. I look at our heartbroken, grieving family, and I have to quote a wise man, my father-in-law, Walter. We'll get through this, we will. God bless.
If I were to use one word to describe my grandfather, Walter Shoenfeld, it would be patriarch. Grandpa was the fabric of this family, literally and figuratively. He was the grandfather that every kid would dream of having, and to my great fortune, he was my grandfather. He was supportive, inspirational, and insightful. His unconditional love, along with gentle encouragement, helped all of us to strive to be the best possible version of ourselves. Just over a year ago, I graduated from college. Like most college graduates, I was unsure of my next move. And while I loved living in LA, I felt like I should push for a new experience. Naturally, I called Grandpa to get his advice. I told him I had the urge to move to New York, even though I had no job, nowhere to live, and I would be leaving all of my closest friends and family. As Grandpa would often say, what is the worst that could happen? If you love it, stay in New York. If you don't, move back. Here I am a year later, and I could not be happier. Thank you, Grandpa. Again, you taught me that life is best when you are willing to step out of your comfort zone, take risks, and try new things. Grandpa cared about family above all else. All of my cousins and I knew that we could call Grandpa anytime. Whatever he was previously doing would be put on hold, and we immediately became his #1 priority. Even more important, he and Grandma planned and executed so many incredible family trips that set the foundation for our extremely close-knit family. And for me, among all of the great trips, there was nothing better than our annual trip to Mauna Kea. As young kids, of course we loved being on the beach and being in the ocean. But the biggest kid of all was Grandpa. He loved being in the ocean with us and teaching us how to body surf. Anyone who knows our family well knows that we have a sundown tradition in Hawaii that we call the ocean sit. Now I know most of you will not be able to see this picture, but let me try to describe what is happening here. We would put our beach chairs in the water near where the wave would break. As the wave hit us, we all got knocked over, and we would get up and go out further into the breaking waves. So clearly there was nothing worse than an ocean sit with no waves. That is when we would call on Grandpa. He would stand behind us, as he was doing here, and he would command the waves to rise. He would literally put his arms in the air and make the waves rise. When I was a little kid, I was 100% certain that it really was Grandpa. Now I'm 23, and I'm perhaps only 85% certain. Sadly, Grandpa won't be with us on our next trip to Hawaii, but I remain confident that he will be watching over us to make the waves rise. Love you, Grandpa.
First off, I just want to thank all of you for coming. It really does mean a lot to me and to everyone. Seeing so many familiar faces and friends here, and thank you. At birth, I was given a great honor. I was named after my grandfather, Walter Shoenfeld. My grandfather and I have always shared a special bond. We both like to spread positive energy, love listening to Frank Sinatra, are really good at navigating airports, and cannot go out throughout a meal without some of the food ending up on ourselves. But our bond goes deeper. From a young age, Grandpa has always invested a lot of time into me. Whether it was going to Disneyland or teaching me how to play golf, we have shared many great times together. Through the time spent with him, there are many lessons I've learned, as well as him being a major inspiration in how I should navigate through life. The first thing I've really learned is that family is everything. Grandpa has made a huge emphasis on making sure my entire family is a support network that I can rely on in both the best times and the worst. They will always be there for me in my time of need, and I for them. It is thanks to my grandfather that I have this value, and I cherish it very much. Second, there is nobody too big or too small for Grandpa. If you are a genuine person and he sees that, he will do all he can to spread his wisdom and help support. It is truly remarkable that the entire time I've known him, he was always able to help and support new people and always continue to make new bonds. Finally, he was one of the happiest people I knew in the world. Nothing could bring Walter Shoenfeld down. He always been able to have a calm, steady mind and make the toughest times seem like nothing. He died the same way he lived, positive, happy, and putting others before him. He is truly one of the most remarkable people and will be greatly missed, but never forgotten. I love you so much, Grandpa. Your guidance and stories will live on through all of us and many generations to come. Thank you.
I know what you mean. Behind me are the sacred Torah scrolls with the teachings of the 5 books of Moses. If you are willing to indulge me, what I would like to say about Dad could easily give them a run for their money, both in length and in wisdom, for living life to the fullest. But the good news for all of you is that I will resist the temptation and somewhat briefly just share a few final thoughts. There's so much to say about how our dad lived his life. He was an entrepreneur before they even decided how to spell the word. By both word and deed, Dad embodied most everything that our Jewish religion tells us about living a virtuous life. He was a friend, confidant, mentor, and role model to many. He had a great sense of humor, loved everything about the city of Seattle. He also really enjoyed Baccarat in London, rolling the bones with Jeff and Randy and I in Vegas, years of friendship at Tamarisk and Palm Springs, and yeah, the end of the year of all of us being together in Hawaii was always really, really special. If you go back in his life, after college and serving in the Korean War, Dad wanted to go into the energy business, but he couldn't stand the idea of his 75-year-old father continuing to schlep neckties to some of the great metropolises of the time, including Wenatchee, Boise, and actually one of Grandpa Max's favorites, Missoula, Montana. So Dad joined in, as of course Dad would, but then the spirit of Dad took over and he quickly expanded into California. And he recently smiled thinking about the owner of the first shop he went into once he crossed the border into the Golden State. And Dad said the poor guy didn't have a chance. He wrote such a big order that to this day he's not sure if those neckties all got sold. From there, this necktie pioneer with the determination of Lewis and Clark built a leading international neckwear company with brands that included Fendi and Valentino and Austin Reed and one of my favorites, Mallory and Church, which Dad enjoyed as well. Moved us, as Jeff talked about, to London in 1971 and built a factory in Scotland. And then, simply by walking down the street, he saw a pair of jeans in the window and inspired him to start a denim business that really inspired so much of an industry here in Seattle and a fashion trend in the 80s and 90s, both here and into Europe. And then I had the great fortune from 1991 to 2004, working with my dad at Vans and our friend Craig Goslin, who's here, and taking the struggling shoe company, neither of us knew anything about a skateboard, and turned it into something that became a pretty cool part of youth lifestyle. Add to this his efforts with the expansion Supersonics, and Lenny, he was so proud of you, and I don't know if y'all remember, but there was this 5-17 team that Lenny took over, and that first year, Game 7 of the finals against the Bullets, we didn't win, but what a great year that was. And then, of course, Lenny came back and said, well, we'll win the championship next year, and we did. And Dad so enjoyed that, along with his expansion Sounders and the expansion Mariners. And then his 24 hours of owning the Miami Dolphins. And you add all that up, and it's not hard to recognize how Dad's days kept pretty busy. Yet while much of what Dad was doing, was pretty cool and made us quite proud, the best part about my dad was just him, the person. Dad loved his parents, and he shared his office with Grandpa Max for over 30 years until he passed away at 108. He bought more $2 tickets betting on his dad's favorite number 3 horse at Long Acres than one might have thought possible. Growing up with Mom and Dad, it was simply a blast. Boat trips, Indian guides, the light-up yo-yos, the blue board. And then as Walter became Grandpa, jumping in the lake or the waves in Hawaii, nothing made him happier. Although, of course, a Mariner win, and Jeff said we were up 7-1 before the game started, which is appropriate today, that of course they'd win. Or a Husky win, or sinking a good putt when he was out with his golf buddies, whether here at Glendale or at Tamarisk. If he got a birdie, well, all that would only just further brighten his day. Michelle and our kids know that I love the play Les Miserables. And having seen it multiple times, I suspect that I'm not alone. If you didn't know my dad well, but you knew the character Jean Valjean, it is that honest, caring, unselfish, incredibly capable and thoughtful person that for me makes the 3-hour play go by quickly, and it is those same qualities and character that were my dad, but also makes his incredible 84 years seems like they went by just a little too quickly as well. By what he said, and even more by what he did, Dad showed us every day how to live a life full of happiness, love, laughter, honesty, ambition, friendship, support for Israel, and caring for those less fortunate. His close friendship with Scoop Jackson exemplified much of what was unique to Dad, including when I was 17 and got to join the two of them for lunch in the Senate dining room. But even better was their trip to China in 1983, which Denny was just reminding me of briefly here this morning. President Reagan had asked Scoop to go to China on his behalf to help further relations during the tense times of the Cold War with Russia. Scoop asked Dad to accompany him, and Dad was so impressed and proud of his friend Scoop for the way he handled these 3 days of tense meetings and exchanges. Towards the end of the trip, Dad figured that this might be his only chance to go see the Great Hall of the People, and the Vice Premier of China agreed to personally escort them. Shortly after, the 6 of them walked into this esteemed 5,000-person chamber. Scoop found himself bursting with unexplainable laughter as Dad whispered to him, "Wouldn't this be a great place for a bar mitzvah?" Newbie, I'm not sure where you are, but you always made Dad laugh. I have no doubt that Jerry Grinstein's fighting one hell of a salmon right now up in Canada, and that's where Dad would want him to be. But he always loved the humorous emails that he got from Jerry. And I think about Coach John Wooden, who would often say, quote, "Things work out for the best for those who make the best of the way things work out." Well, I hate to accuse the honored coach of plagiarism, but I think he got that from Dad. Because as Leanne and Jeff can attest, and Mom, this was certainly one of Dad's mantras. Just 9 days ago, it was late in the evening, and with our kids, we were sitting quietly with him when Mom walked in, it was about 10:30, and asked him how he was doing. As only Dad could at this tough stage of his life, his answer was simply, and I quote, A+. Well, Dad, you were and you are still an absolute A+. We will miss you. I mean, we will really miss you. But we will also carry on and live in the path that you and Mom have showed us. Thanks to all of you, and thank you, Rabbi, your words today. And that poem was so much about Dad. He so believed in the future of generations. Thanks to all of you for the many years of helping enrich the life of husband, Dad, Grandpa, Uncle, and a wonderful man and friend, Walter Shoenfeld. As the rabbis teach us, may his memory be a blessing. Amen.
Another reading that was very meaningful to Walter, again from another 20th century rabbi. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age. From innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing. From foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again. From health to sickness we pray and back again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding. From fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat. Until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. I'd like to ask all of you, if you were able, to please rise as first we intone the inspiring words of the El Mole prayer. El Mole Rachamim Shochen Bamrumim Hamtzei Menucha Nechana Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Keroshim Taharim K'Zohar Harakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Melech Ben Mordechai Shahalach Le'olamo Ba'al Harachamim Yastireu B'Seter K'nefav Le'olamim Bitzro Chaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nechalato V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Walter Shoenfeld, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. And now together, we affirm life and faith and hope, sanctifying the name of God with the Kaddish Shatom, the mourner's Kaddish prayer, as our people has done, down through the ages. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabah, ve'alma devra hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon, v'chayei v'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'isman kari v'imru omen, Yehei Shemei Rabah mevorach le'olam u'lamei lamaya, Yitborach, Yishtabach, Yitar, Yitromam, Yitnase, Yitadar, Yitale, Yitalal, Shemei, Budisha, Brevu, Le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechamata, da'miran berma v'imru omen. Yehei shalom arab amin shamaya v'chayim. Olenu vel kol Yisrael v'imru omen. Yaseh shalom v'broma, Yaseh shalom aleinu vel kol Yisrael v'imru omen. Please be seated. The departed whom we now remember, Walter Shoenfeld, has entered into the peace of life eternal. He still lives on earth in the acts of goodness he performed and in the hearts of all of you who cherish his memory. May the beauty of his life abide among us as a loving benediction. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and bring comfort to all who are bereaved amongst us. And let us say, Amen. Directly following, you are all invited to join with the family at the Sephardic Brotherhood Cemetery. The directions can be found on the back of your supplement. And directly following that, you are invited to join with the family at Leanne and Randy's home for a strictly kosher reception. Walter would be okay with it, I would assume. Also, Shiva services will be held there this evening and Monday evening and Tuesday evening. Monday at the Ottinger home and Tuesday evening at Jeff and Julie Schoenfeld's home, and information can be found on the back of your program. The family would like me to list a number of honorary pallbearers, those they wish to honor because of their close connection with Walter and the family. Elazar Bihar, Isaac Bihar, Albert Bihar, Joel Altschul, Michael Gieses, Mark Schoenfeld, Robert Schoenfeld, Steve Schoenfeld, Rob Kornfeld, Ron Neubauer, Richard Leschgold, Alvin Goldfarb, Fred Backer, Ken Schoenfeld, Richard Loeb, Alvin Pearl, Gerald Grinstein, Leonard Wilkins, Charles Armstrong, Tom Ellison, Monty Rifkin, and Kirk Douglas. And in a moment, I'm going to ask the following pallbearers to please come forward. Active pallbearers: Randy Ottinger, Michael Ottinger, David Schoenfeld, Max Schoenfeld, Ryan Ottinger, and Jack Schoenfeld. At this time, if the pallbearers can please come forward, I'd like to ask the Brotherhood to please help us to escort the casket. If you would all please rise. And if you would please allow the family to exit first.